New Gore-Tex products are made for life. Made for getting out there. Made for life's adventures. Made for life's highs and its lows. With durable products that stand the test of time. Made for going further. Together.
Mt.FUJI 100 2024 ライブやってまいります。
Hey, again, good morning. Ohayou gozaimasu. We are here in the Phoenix studio. I'm Kern Malcolm, joined by Jeff Browning. Jeff, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great.
Are you ready for this?
I'm stoked.
So what is going on is we are bringing you the Mount Fuji 100-mile, part of the Gran Canaria World Trail Majors, partnered with Mountain Outpost, the amazing folks here in our Phoenix studio, as well as the team on the ground in Japan covering the Mount Fuji 100-mile. The race is going to get off on time at midnight local time in about 35 minutes or so. So we'll be bringing you the stream from the start line, as well as getting to hang out with Jeff and I here in studio. Jeff, when did you were over and ran the Mount Fuji 100-mile. When was that?
I ran it in 2015, and it's when it was in September versus April. There was a couple years where they moved it to September, and then they moved it back to April. The course has changed a few times since then. So
さんの名水スタジアムからお送りしておりま
there's
す。
been multiple variations throughout the years. I ran it in a counterclockwise fashion in a full circumnavigation of the mountain, but it was a very muddy year. One of the reasons they moved it away from September, I believe, is at least my understanding, is that's typhoon season. So it's a gnarly time of year with the weather. We had the tail of a typhoon that was over the Philippines when I did it, and I only saw the Fuji for 5 minutes the whole time I was there.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been quite wet on the ground there, at least cloudy this week. It seems like for the first time on Friday, the mountain came out. We have a thing I live in Seattle, Washington. We have a thing in Seattle where it's like we all text each other when Rainier is out. And I think the same thing happens around Mount Fuji. So it is sunny there. Well, it's technically midnight, so it's not sunny yet, but it should be sunny today. It should be clear. The runners should have Mount Fuji over their right shoulder for the duration of the race as they run clockwise in this iteration. But potentially warm, potentially humid. I know that you were there at a different time of year, but can you speak to how hard it is to run in those conditions?
Yeah, it was humid. It was wet and humid when I did it, and hot. So even with it raining, it was humid and hot. So we have some reports that yesterday was 26 degrees Celsius. So it's almost 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's going to be hot when the sun comes out, and it gets to be midday tomorrow.
Yeah, and I know that once again, the course has changed a bit since you've run it. I do think this is pretty similar to the course they ran last year, but they will start on pretty fast dirt roads, kind of akin to logging roads over the first 50K before they move into a more mountainous single track loop after they make it through aid station 4. But that is kind of a unique challenge of like having that really fast start to what is going to be a very long day.
Yeah, and they end the last third of the race is pretty technical. It goes through a lakes area on the northeast side of the mountain, and that's a very technical section, and so they'll it's going to be an interesting. You got to have all the tools in this race.
Yeah, I saw some images that were provided by the World Trail Majors along with Mount Fuji from previous editions of the race, including a great photo of Dylan Bowman finishing the race a number of years ago. And there's actually a section where a runner was lowering himself through a section of rocks with like a little bit of a rope. And I was like, okay, so you've got this combination of very fast early miles plus like obviously some rocky technical rooty bits. I do think it's going to be fairly dry on the ground, so at least not nearly as muddy as when you ran it. But you did mention that, you know, you're not using poles at this race, but when you finished it, you're like, man, my arms are really tired. Why was that?
Well, at night, it was so muddy on the downhills that to slow my momentum down, I was tagging trees with my hand, and so it was making my arms go backward the whole time. And after the race, I was like, man, my shoulders are really sore. And then I was reflecting over the race. I was like, oh yeah, I was trying to check my speed on the downhills because you could get out of control. And so, yeah, and those rope sections, we went up those. I think they go down them now.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so those were really technical, like very big notch, like narrow notches with roots and rocks sticking out, and a little bit of exposure.
Yeah. I've never gotten to run in Japan. I've gotten to ski in Japan, but
Ooh.
I really want to get back over
Cool.
for a race like the Mount Fuji 100. There's a lot of racing going on this weekend. Another stop on the Gran Canaria World Trail Majors is actually in Madeira this weekend.
Yeah,
another
no.
very hard,
0
very
時
technical
の
race.
12時のスタートと
We've got
いうこ
images
とな
from
んで
our
すけれ
start
ど
line
も
though right now with runners getting ready for that midnight start. Again, it's about just before 11:30 p.m. there local time, 7:30 a.m. here in Phoenix. The midnight start's actually an interesting thing to talk about because it's a
Yeah.
very difficult, very challenging way to go into a long ultra. Have you done a midnight start before?
I have one time, Ultra Fjord in Patagonia, I did a midnight start. It's very challenging. You're just waiting and waiting all day, and it's really, I think the only thing that's nice about it is you're fresh through the night, meaning you're not tired, you're not fatigued. So I think that helps. And then it's, it's light soon. So it's only 5 or 6 hours in the dark.
Yeah, it will be hard. The front of the race will, finish Saturday before the sun goes down. But that is not the case for many runners who will have to go through a second night out there. And I think that's where it gets really, really challenging. I do enjoy getting to do a midnight start. Actually, I prefer a midnight start over like the 5 or 6 p.m. start because I feel like I can eat a normal dinner. I can kind of have a normal Friday. I like nap more, etc. But I'm not, trying to deal with that 5 or 6 p.m. start, which I think just messes with my stomach a lot more. Trying to figure out what a meal is at that point of day feels really bad. But for the front of the race, it's nice because you run through the night and then all of a sudden you finish in the afternoon or evening hours before the sun goes down. You don't have that second night. So you're tired, but it's like, cool, you finish the race, you have some dinner, you go to bed. That's kind of in my mind an ideal scenario.
Yeah, definitely challenging for the back of the pack. Back of the pack is going to have to go into a second night, and that's always hard, especially when you have not slept the night before.
Yeah, yes, it is very, very challenging. And we will have people that will like face the sleep monsters out there, particularly because they've been up all day Friday, right? That's the one real challenge is that, you're going into it sleep deprived in a way. And I want to say that, there will be folks that particularly right before sunrise Saturday morning, they will have those sleep monsters, even though they, might only be 50K into their 100-mile experience.
Right.
I want to go to races where there are people kind of cheerleading at the start like this, up on top of I don't think they're up on top of the start line proper, but that's pretty epic. What time of day did Mount Fuji start when you ran it?
I want to say it was around noon.
Okay, so a midday start, which is also very challenging in its own right because then everyone is forced to run through the night in a different way later in the day.
Yeah, later in the day. Yeah, it was definitely tricky.
Yeah, no, it provides like a different type of challenge. There are a number of 100 miles in the U.S. that start kind of in that 10 a.m. to noon window. And they are also uniquely challenging due to you will be finishing at 3 a.m. or 5 a.m., etc.
Yeah, and you end up racing at night.
Yep. Yeah,
in
that
the
is.
front of the pack.
When you ran this course, what they're doing for their starting miles, starting 60K or so, there's still 23,000 feet of climbing in this race, despite a very flat, fast start. They start on that terrain. You finished on that terrain. It's a little bit challenging to also know that you have to have legs
at the end.
At the end of a race like this. Were you happy to be off the mud at that point, or was that also very challenging as far as it being a slippery surface?
It was nice actually because it was mentally fatiguing to concentrate constantly on how the footing was just really slippery because it rained on us a lot in the first part of the race, but it does dry out fairly quickly, so that was nice. It didn't stay super muddy, at least in those sections we were talking about with the rope. So it made it easier on that section. And then once it was nice to get on roads and be like, okay, I just have to turn over now because you've been focusing for so long. But this is the opposite. They get to run really, really fast, and it'll. I think I would predict it's going to go out really fast, kind of like a UTMB type race or something like that, where they really are going to hammer at the beginning, and that can come back to bite you. So those who that plan their race early and stick to their race plan and not get caught up in the race will probably, you'll see moving up through the pack later when we get into the technical stuff in the lakes area.
Yeah, and it's, someone pointed out that it's not going to get canceled due to snow this year. There was, I think that was the 2021 edition of the race, where they had to cancel the race mid-race. I think the top couple of women might have finished and the top 10 men, but everyone else got pulled from the course that year. And this race is going to set up very different. It's going to be humid during the peak of the day today. Of day one, it's going to be 25, 26 degrees Celsius, so up into the 80s, which will feel like the first very warm day of spring. And it sounds like they are expecting maybe some rain over the second night with some dropping temperatures. So there will be added challenges to those finishing kind of after the 24-hour mark, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But again, there are, between the two distances going on this weekend, the 100-mile and the 70K, there are 3,400 runners towing the line. I believe 2,800 of them are in the 100-mile race. 450 individuals coming in from, or nations represented, or international athletes on the line. They'll have about a 200-person start initially, that first wave that will start at midnight local time, and then the remaining 2,400 runners will take off in that next 30-minute window, which makes it, I believe, the largest ultra, or at least the largest 100-mile in Japan.
Yeah, it's a big race.
It's a huge race.
Yeah, and it's really fun. It is. I really enjoyed myself when I was there.
Yeah, and I feel like we were looking through the results of some of the favorites, particularly the Asian athletes that are going to be on the start line today, and just learning about a bunch of new races. I feel like for both of us, races that we have never heard of, that are local to Hong Kong, that are local to Japan, that are local to the Philippines and Vietnam. It just I feel like opens up a whole new world of race possibilities.
Yeah.
So we're planning a new trip to Japan, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would love to go run it again.
Yeah.
I thought it was an awesome race.
Yeah, you can't have us in studio next year. Unfortunately, we're going to be on the ground live from the race course next year.
Or I'm going to be racing.
I hope so.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
We'll see.
We'll pin bibs on for this thing next year.
Yeah.
You've got us in studio today. So basically, we'll be on through about 15 to 20 minutes after the start goes off. And then because it is very, very dark out there, as the runners take off into the night, we'll take a break here in studio. The live stream will take a break, and then we'll be coming on kind of several hours into the race around 12:30 local time here in Phoenix, picking up the runners as they are kind of approaching that 50K mark through that first flatter section of the course. And it's really cool. We do have an English on-course correspondent as well, a local Marco, who's going to be guiding us, our infield correspondent, guiding us through the race experience over the next 24 hours. And I'm really excited that we have someone who has such great knowledge of all of the runners, not just the local runners, but really the elite field that will be out there today.
Yeah, we'll be relying on him to give us some good beta.
Yeah. He's got intel from the crews out there. He's going to be everywhere, it sounds like. So we have the luxury in studio with Mountain Outpost to have both the feed coming from the Mount Fuji 100 organizers as well as our camera with Marco.
And I think right now we're looking at video of is that Camaraderie? Is that who was talking? Yeah, I have a little history with Camaraderie.
What kind of history?
We raced against each other at Hardrock in 2014, the year Jason Coop and I and Camaraderie and Diana Finkel all got pinned down in American Basin in a gnarly lightning storm.
Is that when Coop infamously just jumped into a random person's tent?
Into a rando tent, yes. He was hypothermic. We were all a little hypothermic. I had more gear on me, layers, and was able to maintain my body heat enough to, but we had a 70-minute pause during the race.
Oof.
And we're getting poured on. I mean, you're from the Midwest. It was a Midwest style downpour.
Yeah, those storms can be really scary. I actually, speaking of midnight starts, have done TDS a couple times as part of the UTMB race weekend, and we actually got held, like physically held on course. We were in between major checkpoints, but had hit a minor checkpoint right as a huge storm rolled through, and they just kept adding new runners to this little globe tent. Every couple minutes a new runner would appear. And we were just like all cowering together in this tiny tent in between major checkpoints. And then finally we like coaxed them to let us leave. We're like, if we leave together, if we agree to go together, will you let us go? And we were pinned in this tent for like 45 minutes before they finally were like, okay, we've like radioed ahead. You can leave, but you must leave together. And there are probably 15 of us that like all headed out of this tent into like the tail end of this storm to be like, we have to keep moving. Like, we're getting cold, we're getting stiff, we're getting hungry. This is like well into a day of racing. At this point, you're watching people that you've been, 30 or 45 minutes ahead of catching up to you. And you're like, we got to get out of here. We can't be here any longer.
Yeah. We didn't have the privilege of a tent in that year. And Camaraderie had a rock fall coming up Bear Canyon, and had sliced his face from a rock fall that he ducked from, and it bounced off the ground up into his face and sliced his cheek. So he had a big bandage on his face, and then we were pinned down. This is probably a couple hours later, and we're pinned down in American Basin with lightning striking the ground all around us. And it was cool when a year later I was at Fuji, and he was the race director, and because he doesn't speak English, and through an interpreter, we were able to share our kind of shared experience, and it was really a cool moment to be able to like relive that together a bit a year later.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to be able to reflect on those moments of like, cool, we made it.
We made it. We survived. That's why this is a little trivia. This is why I have custom glass blown earrings. I used to have metal hoops, and I went and had, after that experience, the whole time when I was going over the top of Handies, and lightning struck the point of Handies like 40 yards in front of me when I was coming off the top, and I was thinking the whole time, I don't want to die. I have kids. And
it puts it into perspective very, very quickly.
And I've got metal in my ears. I'm like a lightning rod. So I immediately went home that year and had custom earrings made.
That's wild. Speaking of kind of, racing internationally, getting to experience a bunch of different literal flavors, how different are the aid stations at a race like the Mount Fuji 100 in comparison to European aid stations and in comparison to what we experience here in the U.S.?
Well, I moved through the aid station so fast that
you don't even remember. You didn't even stop to taste anything.
I hardly. You know what? I was there 10 days, and I had a chaperone the whole time, and it was awesome. I got to experience a ton of Japanese cuisine.
It's amazing.
It's awesome.
Literally one of my favorite things in the world is just to go like eat my way through Japan.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really fun. But during the race, I was, all business. So.
Yeah, I do know, and this is from watching both Japanese and Chinese athletes race too on the world stage, is that, you will see things like noodles and rice, etc.
Yes.
Oftentimes like sticky rice at the aid stations, which I got to experience firsthand in Hong Kong for the Hong Kong 100K a number of years back.
Yep.
Not only did we have delightful sticky rice balls, but we also had the cutest little sandwiches that reminded me, like, I felt like I was at an English tea, like, the whitest white bread, like a little 7-Eleven style, like Japanese, like egg sandwich on, the whitest white Wonder Bread essentially. And it was super good, really easy just to like pop in the mouth and keep going.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. So the aid stations, turns out it's a lot of usual suspects. But I'm actually hoping too that we'll get to see some of the aid station delicacies, and talk to Marco about them as we get further into the race.
That's why I'm excited at some point in my career to slow down so I can enjoy the aid stations.
Yeah, I advise it. This past year at Cascade Crest 100, I was having a rough stomach day. My stomach was not cooperating, and I was really stubborn and I didn't want to fix it either. And finally, we run into the nighttime. I'm at this random aid station in the middle of nowhere. There's a puppy dog. It's great. And my pacer makes me stop to just be like, you need to eat something. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, we're not doing this anymore. Pacing
Good
for
pacer.
very good pacer. And they were making quesadillas with instant mashed potatoes in them.
Oh, I bet that was
And
amazing.
it was game changing. A little bit of cheese, a little bit of tortilla, a little bit of instant mashed potatoes in there. It was a life altering experience. And just a good reminder too that, oftentimes we're relying on the nutrition we're carrying. We're not gonna sample, the cured meat and cheese maybe from some of our European aid stations. But when you need it, that stuff is there, and the broth that's at the aid station, the noodles that are at the aid station, the quesadilla, the real food that's there can really settle what's going on and allow you to catch up in a way where you can turn your race around if you are in a funk.
Yeah, and sometimes that can only need to take 5 to 7 minutes to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot of time. It turns out I went from like having a death march to running a great final 20 miles of this race.
Yeah,
it's like
you just needed calories.
It turns out I just needed calories. I know that people are tuning in from all over the place. We are both on the Mountain Outpost YouTube as well as the Gran Canaria World Trail Majors YouTube. So you can hop in the chat over there. I'm keeping my eyes on both of them for you all. So let us know where you're watching from. I know that someone's watching from Madeira. I don't know if they're racing Madeira this weekend, but that'd be a pretty nice way to pregame your race. But yeah, let us know where you're watching from and who you're cheering for. As the race gets going, we'll be able to start to identify the runners and kind of who is in the front of the field. But we do know, I think many people are tuning in to see the likes of Courtney DeWalter take the stage. She's been here before. She's happy to be back. She's our personal queen, and we expect her to run, very, very well. She'll be joined by the likes of Nicole Bitter, also of the U.S. Honestly, the first part of this race course really plays into Nicole Bitter's strength as far as being a very fast start to this race. But, they will be challenged by a number of Japanese, Chinese, and runners from Hong Kong as well. Some runners that, we picked out included Chizuru Ofushi of Japan, placing third, I believe is the highest returning finisher from the 2023 edition of the race, as well as Yumi Yoshikawa of Japan, who I think was fourth place. So our third and fourth place female finishers from last year are back at this race. And then from Hong Kong, Kichun Wong placed 11th at the Hong Kong 100K, 5th at Trans Jeju last year, as well as 2nd as the Translanta by UTMB and Doi Inthanon. So raced, a ton of really good 100Ks last year, and excited to see what she can do in this 100-mile race. The men's field is kind of a smattering of really interesting athletes. I know that we've got lots of people cheering for Anthony Lee in the chat. I think we're going to be able to talk to his crew later today, which is also very exciting.
Yeah, we have Pete Mortimer's in the race too from the U.S.
Yep, and then
who's a personal friend of mine.
I think fan favorite oftentimes in this race, or in races that I've done commentary for, John Ray Onifa, an athlete from the Philippines, but I think is living in Japan now. I think that's what Marco said. He's either living in Hong Kong or Japan now, but people call him John Ray Stingray. He'll be out there running well. We've got Gregory Kermer of France, who had kind of some standout performances in 2023, including finishing second at Ultra Trail Snowdonia, which is it's basically, in my mind, a low elevation Hardrock.
Oh.
Super burly,
Cool.
very rocky, just kind of constant up and down in Wales. Very, very challenging 100-mile race. Finished second there last year, but then kind of had some mixed results later in his season. A 27th at Trail Verbier in the 76K, and then a 13th at TDS. So kind of curious to see how he fares. Obviously, Snowdonia, the race that he excelled at last year, is very rocky, very different than I would say a majority of this course, but is a very, very strong runner. There's going to be a number of Chinese athletes who we're going to be chasing, I think, all day. Generally go out very aggressively, very fast runners off the front, generally speaking. Both Chin and Guiming, who finished 4th and 5th last year, are back again, and anticipated, I think, to do super, super well.
Yeah, they do. In my experience at Fuji too, that group went out really, really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, and this course is suited to that too as well. I
going
think
out fast.
there are going to be a lot of people who are not in contention in the first 50, 60K of this who come back later in the race on the more technical portions potentially.
Yeah.
I think that it
Yeah, the
will,
true mountain runners will shine in the last third of this race.
Yeah, it'll favor them in a big way. We should also mention, we'd be remiss not to mention the top ranked Japanese runner in this field, Yuya Kawasaki of Japan, is the top returning finisher on the men's side.
He was second last year.
Yeah, the runner up last year. So super excited to see if he can move one step up the podium. And I think the question on everyone's mind is, how far is Courtney Dauwalter going to finish in the overall?
Ooh, I think pretty high.
Are we placing wagers?
I don't know, but I love Courtney, so like I would put her up there. She's had such a great year last year. I mean, she crushed it last year, so she's definitely at the top of her game. And if she's had a good spring training, I think we'll see her, definitely in the top 10 overall and maybe top 5. I'd love to see her on the overall podium. That would be cool.
Yeah. I think that of any race she's recently run, there is a strong possibility that happens. Here, she's had an interesting start to her season. She won Gran Canaria earlier this year, running super, super strong. She was just, I assumed when I saw that she was over in Corsica for the Solomon team camp, I was like, oh, she's going to Europe and then she'll just go to Japan from there. Oh, no. Went to Corsica, went to Annecy and Corsica, and then flitted back home very quickly before making her way over to Japan. And it sounds like she's been eating her way through the candy aisle at the 7-Elevens.
I'm sure.
Which I think is just probably a dream situation for Courtney.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I think a backstory on Courtney, she asked me in her first Hardrock, I think it was maybe my 6th Hardrock, and she said, give me any good advice from a veteran, and I said, I used Rock Horton, if anyone is out there, famous older guy in the space, 10-time Hardrock finisher. He gave me this advice, and he'd given it to Joe Grant too. And Joe Grant had reminded me of this advice, and he said, "Imagine a 100-mile race as an artisan piece of sourdough bread.
Oh,
and you're a knife, and you have one slather of peanut butter on your knife, and the peanut butter is your effort, and you need to spread that peanut butter over the whole piece of bread."
You probably won't be able to hear them, but is that Steve and Janet from the Hong Kong 100K and the World Trail Majors? No, that's totally okay. Just wanted to highlight who's on the screen for viewers at home. They are part of the quintessential team that got the Gran Canaria World Trail Majors off the ground, representing the Hong Kong 100K.
Cool.
As well. Good to see them on the ground at Mt.FUJI. Poor Jamil got trapped here in studio. No Mt.FUJI for him this year. I'm sure they have to rock, paper, scissors for who gets to go. To what race? Anthony Lee.
Courtney.
And
there's Courtney. And Pete Mortimer right behind. You can't miss Pete with his beard, and he's 6'4".
The Americans have glommed together very quickly.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, Pete Mortimer has to be a big hit in Japan.
Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah, I've got a good friend of mine, Grayson Murphy's in China right now, and is going to be taking part in the Golden Trail Series race that's going on there this weekend. And her fiance Logan is, 6'3", and I was like, oh, Logan's a big deal in China.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, we're about 8 minutes from the start, local time, and again, these runners have been waiting all day. Race week doldrums always make you want just the race to start.
It's so hard.
And those evening starts, or you could convince yourself a very, very, very early morning start.
Right.
For this is really hard when you're just waiting for it to happen. We've pinned in the Mountain Outpost YouTube channel, we've pinned the live tracking to the top of the chat so that you guys can more easily find the live trackers that are on the elites for this race. And as always, we are also paying attention to the World Trail Majors YouTube channel and that chat too. So you can join us in both of those places all day long. We'll cover for probably the next 30 minutes or so. And then the live broadcast will take a little bit of a break if you're just joining us, because the runners are heading off into the dark. And it turns out it's really hard to see anything when you're following runners running in the dark.
Yeah, it's hard to video at night.
To be fair, there is a full moon, or we're 2 days past the full moon, I think. And so if it's clear out there, particularly on these the dirt road section at the start, they should have pretty good illumination just from the full moon in general, which is a nice treat when you're running through the night to actually have that. I've got friends when they do, Nolan's, for example, in Colorado, they try to target it if they get a weather window around a full moon, just because like your headlamp need goes down. Your like the strain and stress on your eyes goes way down in those situations.
Yeah, and it looks like it's just based on dress at the start line. It looks like it's not very cold.
It's not a chilly start is what it's looking like, which is, not always a good sign either.
No, that means it's going to be hot tomorrow.
Yeah, it is already warm is my guess. And I do believe we saw an athlete in a normal kit there at the start, and I think that was Wang Hucheng, a Chinese athlete representing normal. I think that is who that was on the start line, just to the left-hand side of Pete and Courtney there.
The sleeveless jersey.
Yeah, with the sleeveless jersey. So we will be working to identify all of our runners. We've got the most insane Google Sheet start list situation. But again, at midnight in 6 minutes, 200, the Wave 1 runners will take off. That's about 200 runners. And then the remaining runners, the remaining 400 runners will take off after them. That is a massive starting field.
It is a huge field.
Yeah, it is an absolutely massive field. Midnight local start does give the U.S. runners an advantage, with it being, maybe the body is feeling a bit more normal. It totally depends on how long they've been over there for, but I have, I know that Courtney's been over there for a few days. It's kind of like, do you even adjust to the time change when you're traveling like that? Or do you try to
I feel like, why?
Stay up late, sleep in?
Just sleep and do whatever.
Yeah.
Because you're going to, but right about the time you get adjusted, you're starting at midnight.
Yeah.
So what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why would you adjust when you're going to do that? I've definitely taken that tact at TDS and at Madeira, both of which have midnight starts too. And I think that it is kind of just, you try to stay more or less on your US based sleep schedule. And you kind of arrive late. Tyler Green, who's not on the start line due to travel woes at Madeira this weekend, was flying in fairly late, I think, for similar reasons, basically to not have to make that big time adjustment. Someone asked in the chat, is this a hard race to get into for the non-Japanese runners? Honestly, I think post-pandemic initially it was, because there was a big delay. They had to, roll runners over for a number of years. And then they actually were able to start, but they were able to start the race back up, but it wasn't open to non-Japanese runners for a while, in part because there were restrictions traveling into Japan kind of post-pandemic. But I think now, as a non-Japanese runner, you do have a pretty good shot of getting into this race, given a fairly big starting field. Courtney on the start, Anthony Lee on the start. We're getting some of the audio, I think, from the studio on the ground there. We'll see if we can get some start line audio. I don't know if there is any audio from the starting area. What type of Japanese candy do you think Courtney has in her pack right now? All of it.
All of it.
I know. I was texting her my favorites. I was like, you should try this and this and this. But yeah, she'll be a connoisseur out there. She's got her race day nutrition, but I do imagine that she's got some newfound, maybe sour Japanese gummy candy in her pack.
Yeah, we talked about gummy bears.
Gummy bears are one of our
night.
favorite in-race fueling, it turns out.
It is. We both agree on gummy bears.
Yeah, you need those carbohydrates. Okay, so they are just minutes away from the start. Wave 1 kicking off in just about 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, everyone's been waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, it's about to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the atmosphere. I mean, we don't have audio from the start line, so it doesn't seem like the atmosphere is too hyped for
Yeah,
there
it's
being
midnight.
that many people on the ground. I don't know. The Madeira start at midnight is also just like the most intense sensation in the world. It is all hype, sprinting straight uphill out of there, which is nice for this race. You're not sprinting straight uphill. You get to ease in to a nice dirt road section instead.
Right. That's a nice shot right there of the start
Yeah.
line.
And again, if 160K is too much for you, but you really want to get over to do a race like this, they do a 70K. They have a 70K race there as well. Stephanie Howe, I was messaging with her. She's over there to do the 70K. So 160K wasn't quite ready for that right now, but a 70K, she could go to Japan for a 70K.
That's awesome. Almost down to a minute to the start.
I feel like we're getting a little bit of start line music, and it's like so nice and calm feeling in comparison to so many European race starts.
I would say this. One thing I experienced when I was at Fuji was they are so respectful and humble, and the culture overall, and sometimes they can be a little quiet compared to, say, Europe, for example, where they're like aggro in your face, ringing a bell, yelling "ole ole ole." There's a much more respectful atmosphere there, and I really enjoyed my time there due to that. It was eye opening that a world can be like that.
Yeah, it's very there's a reason, you know, every place has a spot, you know, a place for everything type of scenario over there.
If you haven't been to Japan, you should go.
Yeah,
It's pretty awesome.
If you have FOMO right now, plan a trip to Japan. Here we
There we go. And they're off.
Pete Mortimer might have gotten clotheslined by that banner if he wasn't careful.
And we have the first 200 runners off and running.
Yeah, one of my teammates, Shunshan, who is a race director over in Japan, runs a race series called Fun Trails. And it's the 10th edition of one of their races this fall, and I'm trying to organize a group of humans to go run it in November.
Cool.
Little Fun Trails action.
Awesome.
Yeah. You're like, I can go do a 50K or 100K. It is the most route-filled race you'll ever experience.
Even worse than Hurt?
I think so. Maybe Anthony will go to it. It'll be great. Post Hurt 100, he's ready for it.
I would make a comment there. You'll notice that they have red blinking lights. That's a requirement on the course, especially with these early road sections. I have to say, though, it can be a little distracting when you're in a group because they're like mesmerizing when you're behind someone that's blinking in your face.
At Transvolcania, because some of the headlamps actually just have them on the battery pack, which is super convenient.
Yep.
But some that you see like dangling off of packs there, it is trippy. I've definitely felt like under the trance / like nauseous running behind people at Transvolcania, because same requirement there that you need to have a blinking red light for like the starting 10 kilometers. And it can be a little unnerving to follow this bouncing blinking light in front of you. Yeah, they're starting at midnight. The projected winners are expected to be in on Saturday local time, I think around 7 p.m., 7:20 p.m. at the earliest. That is very, 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 very early in the morning here in the Pacific time zone in the U.S. But then the live stream will cover through the 24-hour mark, which will be 8 a.m. Local time here in Phoenix, Arizona, and midnight on the ground. So you've got a whole lot of us. While we will be taking a break in about 15-20 minutes or so as we lose the feed in the field because they are running through the night. We'll be back kind of midday here in the U.S., taking you all the way up until dinner time before we hand over to our overnight shift, our overnight crew. AJW and Chris Warden will be in studio taking everyone through the American night, which could be fun if you you're working night shift or something, you got to stay up.
Yep.
Grab some popcorn.
Exactly.
Sounds like a pretty good
Thursday
evening.
night, if you don't have to work on a Friday.
Getting
Stay up with us.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big race weekend, right? You've got Madeira going on, you've got Golden Trail World Series going on, you've got Mount Fuji 100 mile going on, you've got Canyons endurance runs. It is a jam-packed, like, race season is officially upon us.
It is on.
And there is no stopping this train at this point.
Yeah, and we've got Kokodona coming soon.
Yeah, Kokodona around the corner. That will be the next thing. When we finish here early Friday morning, the next live broadcast from the Mountain Outpost will be a long stream at the Kokodona 250, a race that you are actively tapering for.
I am tapering. Finally. It has been a big volume spring
Yeah,
with heavy packs.
I believe it. You got to get ready. It's going to be absolutely wild. Yeah, it's going to be a cool race. I told you actually yesterday evening that I've told athletes of mine who run the race every year that I'm worried if I go and see the race that I'll have to do it.
Oh, you will.
And so I've stayed away successfully thus far. And it's going to be, we'll see. It's calling my name. I'll be at Transvolcania this year instead, but maybe one of those future editions, I'll find myself on the
We're
Kokodona
going to
race
drag
course.
you in.
I believe it. I'm
Kicking and screaming.
I am all about it. Someone that we had a comment that came through to the chat saying, like, not sure what the course record condition will be, just because it is going to be fairly warm there for runners coming out of winter, coming into spring. It's going to be the first kind of hot spring day running around Mount Fuji. It's been overcast for the past week there, but it is going to hit peak temperatures are going to be 25 or 26 degrees Celsius, so well into the 80s, and fairly humid, which is really challenging, because you don't have that great evaporative cooling anymore.
Yeah. And we'll see who, some of these runners may have done some heat training if they were smart, just because the potential of when the sun does come out there, it gets humid and hot. So those who prepped will have a better chance later tomorrow as the race unfolds. Those who didn't, ooh.
Yeah,
Ouch.
You're gonna have to stay on top of your thermoregulation needs. You're gonna have to stay on top of your hydration and nutrition needs. We're as curious as you are in the chat what some of those aid stations look like. I know we've got some folks on the ground there who probably know better than us, because apparently you ran too fast to experience any of the aid station delicacies. I
have a soy allergy. So I'm very picky, and so I usually bring my own stuff. And so I don't do, if I have a crew, I don't do I carry my own stuff. I do very simple nutrition. So I don't stray much from like fruit.
Yeah.
It's safe.
Yeah, and there should be things like fruit out there as well as staples like sticky rice, etc.
I like sticky rice, though.
I put some plugs in to see kind of what people's favorite aid station fare is out on Japanese race courses. I know from my experience in Hong Kong that, sticky rice and little kind of finger sandwiches were so delightful as we got deeper into that race. That race had its own hiccups, though. There's this large section with kind of aggressive monkeys on it, and you're instructed ahead of the race not to eat on that section for a couple of kilometers,
because they'll try to steal it from you.
If they hear the packaging, they are like,
that's trippy.
Yeah, they will come for your snacks. So that's always a fun.
That's like a movie.
Yeah, it's a fun thing
like
to
a movie
experience.
scene.
I've experienced the same thing in India, where I found out right before we started the race that there were snakes and panthers and monkeys, and if we got bit by a snake, we should try to get a photo of the snake and then sit down. That's what we were told, and wait for another runner to come to us. And I was like, cool, I'm going to try to take a picture of this snake if I get bit on this race course. I think there will be minimum interaction with wildlife during this race for all the runners, and that is a blessing.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I was looking for snakes yesterday, coming down to Phoenix and doing a training run yesterday in the heat. The rattlesnakes are out.
Yeah, and in about 15 minutes or so, we'll be donning our race gear, our running gear, our race gear, to go out for a little trail run while we lose our stream as the runners head in to the night. But yeah, actually, so someone, I've got input from the field that yakisoba, so fried noodles and other stuff is quite tasty out there. I do think the noodle game has to be great. My crew at many like slower mountainous 100 miles will make kind of like instant ramen and stuff for me just because it's really soft and warm and goes down really easily.
Yeah.
I've got to imagine the noodle game at Japanese aid stations is pretty on point. Yeah, and our man behind the scenes, Zach Marion, updating the live chat on projected men's and women's winning finishing times, projected around 3 or 4 a.m. Pacific on the men's side and around 6 or 7 a.m. Pacific on the women's side, although our Courtney DeWalter watch will kick off pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we'll be back on in the morning for the women finishing.
Yeah,
Gran
and I will likely miss the men's winner. We better not miss Courtney.
If we miss Courtney, I'm going to be so mad. We might want to keep track of it overnight. Maybe at least set an alarm for early
and then
to check it.
We'll come push Zach out of studio if we need to.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, we gave Zach the 2 a.m. shift to cover it.
Well, he was nice enough because I am tapering for Cocodona to take the 2 a.m. shift. So thanks, Zach.
So what you're seeing on your screen right now, this is the additional waves. Remember, the first wave was just 200 runners. There are another 2,400 runners to get off the start line here in the 100 mile. There's about 800 runners that will take part in the 70K that will start later today. But yes, you're seeing the next wave of runners ready to start their journey around Mount Fuji.
Is it only one big wave, or is it multiple smaller waves for the 100?
My understanding was that it was kind of one big wave, but I don't actually know. It was they're supposed to take off. I think it's probably technically every 10 minutes. So there should be multiple waves. I can check our big start list.
And that's nice because that's actually a great way to have a big field like that, because then it spreads the field out a little more and it's not so crazy for the middle and back of the pack, and they're not just always in a constant conga line.
Yeah, it looks like there's 4 waves. So this, I believe, is wave 2 getting underway. There'll be 2 more waves that will kick off, with the last wave kicking off right around 12:30 local time in Japan. But yeah, it allows them to get that nice clean start. They're not so far back from the starting line. We've all experienced that at races like UTMB, where it's like if you're not in that front start corral, you're like back behind the church several blocks away, minutes and minutes. It's like a big road marathon, right? Where it's like the gun goes off and it's 10 minutes before you ever hit the start line. So they've gone to a wave start, which also helps at aid stations as well. The wave start does spread the runners out a little bit more. So when they hit those aid stations early in the race, there isn't quite so many runners all packed together. Kind of an interesting piece of the way the current race course is set up is that the early aid stations are actually quite spread out in the 100-mile race. I was just going to pull that up to refresh my memory here. But yeah, it's, the first aid station is 25 kilometers into the race, and then really aid station 2 is 52K into the race. So 15 mile sections. Very, very spread out. And like we said, while they do get the benefit of running in the dark to start, at most we're seeing runners in arm sleeves at the front of the race. So it's definitely not cold at the start, and it is going to get quite warm. So you've got to be cognizant of how much water and fluid you're carrying between those first 2 aid stations, just because you could get behind very, very quickly. Oh, for sure. Without really noticing that you're getting behind. Yeah, and to give a kind of a preview of what they have coming through most of the night, they have the first section's 25 kilometers, the second one's 27, then it's 18.2 and 26.7. So a lot of pretty big sections. 12 to 15 miles between aid stations at the beginning. Yeah, that's actually more like a 200 plus. Yeah, with those long spread between aid stations. The aid stations do get closer and closer as they make it. They're still actually, aid station 2 and 3 are closer together. Only about 18K separate those two. And then it's another big jump. 26.7K. Which is, at that point in the race too, you're talking between 70K in and 97K in or so. That is deep into the race. That's heat of the day. That's runners surviving through that section that's actually quite a struggle. I think we could see a lot of carnage. between aid station 3 and aid station 4, and then from there the runners actually, aid station 4 is actually the finish area.
Yep.
And then they go out and do a loop from that point all around these really beautiful lakes that are on the backside of the mountain there, and that will be a much more rugged, much more kind of undulating section of the course, where a lot of the vert, I think, does get kind of hidden in that section of the race.
Yeah, and according to our correspondent on the ground, Marco, he's very familiar with the course. He said that section is beautiful. I ran that at night, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to see it.
You have to go back. You have to go back so you can see
I
that
really
section.
wanted it. It actually would suit me better because it finishes on harder technical stuff, right? And the runnable stuff's not at the end anymore; it's at the beginning.
Yep.
When you should be managing and cruising early and taking care of yourself. You know, the first third's a warm up, people.
Yeah. It should be, right?
should
doesn't
be.
always feel that way.
You're a coach. I'm a coach. The first third should be a warm up.
Yeah, you should be easing your way into it. Well, I tell runners all the time, you don't want to start so easy, because it turns out at mile 80, you still run 80 miles. But there's a difference between running easy and running like too easy.
And you can easily run 20 to 30 seconds a mile too hard as well in that first third. And still, because you're fit and you're tapered and you're wound up a little bit, it's easy to kind of blow your race in the first third too.
Yeah, you start to burn matches really quickly, right?
Yeah.
You get caught up in other people's races. You're thinking ahead. You've gotten ahead of yourself. So you really do need to take care of yourself early in these races so that you can feel good when you get to mile 70, mile 80. You're still going to have 70 miles or 80 miles in your legs, but knowing that you've taken care of yourself, that you've prepared for that moment, that your body isn't falling apart, that you're not doing damage control. There's a difference between like what the last 20 miles of 100 feels like versus a death march, the final 20 miles.
Yeah. And we should be in studio when that long section, that 26.7 kilometer section unfolds, I believe.
Yeah, it'll be kind of cool to see what that actually looks like for our front runners as they make it through. Yeah, entering the heat of the day. You and I will be in studio, I think, until about 6 or 7 p.m. when we hand off
Phoenix time.
Phoenix time, local time. We get to sleep, and then we're handed off.
Join us on a Thursday evening. Make your dinner.
Yeah, happy hour.
Crack a cold one
on Mountain Outpost.
Pour your wine, whatever your preference is.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll have to bring some wine back to studio for us, but. We will be here. We're going to take a little bit of a break here, I think, in the next 5 minutes. And then we'll be back to check in with our runners around 12:30 Pacific time, local to us here in Phoenix, picking up the runners.
That should be around dawn.
Yeah,
for them.
should be. We should be getting the sunrise, hopefully, around Mount Fuji.
Yeah. Awesome.
Right? The FOMO is building, I think, is what's happening.
Oh, my gosh. I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, I can't do Kokodona and Mount Fuji. So we'll have to figure out a way to meter this out over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'll crew you.
Perfect. Done.
If you come next year.
Kokodona?
Yeah.
Sweet.
I'm local.
You'll run Mount Fuji, and then you'll crew me for Kokodona.
Oh, my gosh. I actually already committed to a race in April, though, nationally here in the U.S. I'm sorry.
Can't take you anywhere. That is
I know. I'm bummed now that I really want to run Fuji again.
You know, you're just going to have to plan for it. So, yeah. So what is happening is we've got, it is just after midnight local time. We have 4 waves of runners taking off into the night. They've been eagerly anticipating getting to actually start their 100-mile journey. And that is actively taking place. 4 waves of runners, 2,600, 2,800 runners on the start line this morning for the 100-mile, starting their journey around the mountain. Not a full circumnav, but pretty darn close. They'll have Mount Fuji over their right shoulder for the majority of their race. But yeah, they're heading off into the night, and so we won't have cameras on them. So we're
like
gonna
2/3. I think they go 2/3 of the way around the mountain now.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of really cool when you top things out. There's a lot of forest. So there is times when you're in the canopy and you can't see, but when you do top out little sections, you get views of Fuji. The year I did it, it actually broke out during the morning when I was in the hard section we were talking about earlier with the ropes.
Yep.
And I saw video later after that race, and Fuji was like looking right over my shoulder, but I was so focused on racing because I was trying to get on the podium and I was pushing hard and I had my head down going hard. So I didn't see it come back out. It actually came out twice while I was there. I just missed the second time. First time was before the race.
So you definitely have to go back because now you've missed the aid stations and you've missed getting to actually see Mount Fuji over your shoulder. So it sounds like we're sending you back to Fuji one way or another.
Maybe 2026.
Maybe 2026. We're getting it on your calendar as we speak. But yeah, we are on our way to I don't know, really diving full in. Here's another one of those, the waves of runners getting ready to start. Again, they are starting by 12:30 local time, just after midnight on the ground. Almost 3,000 runners essentially in the 100-mile race will be on their way around the mountain. But yeah, we're slowly going to be winding down here in studio as we watch these next wave of runners getting ready to take off on their life in a day or life in 2 days, depending on how this race goes for folks.
Right. We'll see how people manage in the heat.
Yeah. It's going to be the temperature actually variation over the course of this race. I think is going to be quite challenging for our mid and back of the pack, because we are expecting rain over. It looked like Shun. I thought Shun was supposed to be racing. No, it's not Shun. That's your Hardrock homie, I think.
Oh yeah, that's Camaraderie.
Yeah, saying hi to everyone. I love it.
Yeah, we're expecting rain on night 2. There's rain in the forecast.
Yeah,
so heat and sun during the day,
and temperatures falling during that storm that comes through.
Yes.
So we do run a risk of some of these athletes, struggling with some incredibly high temperatures for a spring race today during the day, and then dealing with some very cold, rainy temperatures overnight, which can get pretty serious pretty fast. In years where they've had kind of almost spring snowstorms come through, they've had to cancel the race mid-race. It's not supposed to be nearly to that degree, but that is something that we are anticipating the mid and the back of the pack having to deal with, just like a very volatile weather change.
And I can attest to what the conditions are on the course when it does rain, and there are sections that have a lot of clay in the dirt, and so it gets really slimy and slick, and it's really hard to keep footing. So it's a very challenging. It in certain sections it's not super rocky. It's dirt, so it gets muddy and slippery.
Yeah, that's not.
And it's rutted a little bit in spots, so it's tricky.
It becomes very technical very, very quickly while your legs are already tired. So here is, I believe, wave 3 taking off on their journey.
If you're just joining us, they're doing waves every 10 minutes.
Yep. So the final wave will take off at 12:30 local time, and nearly 3,000 runners will be out on course. I keep forgetting that it's Friday, that it's Thursday here in studio, Friday in Japan, and then the 70K will start Saturday morning, a full 24 hours after the start of the 100-mile race, which makes sense, right? A Saturday morning start for a 70K seems more reasonable. But our runners are underway. Their journey has begun. And when we come back live in studio, we'll be picking them up much further down the course, hopefully getting to see the inkling of sunrise as they make their way, kind of into probably aid station 2 and 3.
And who went out too hard?
We were messaging about Paddy O'Leary's race earlier this week, and talking about how he had a good experience in the sense that he really enjoyed his time in Japan there last year, but also had a very hard race experience where I do think those early miles really took a toll on his stomach, on kind of settling into the race, etc. And the midpoint of the race got very, very hard very, very quickly.
Yeah, when you're in these long sections in the beginning of the course between aid, it's easy at night to not drink enough, even though you still need to drink. And so it makes it a very tricky section because you probably need to carry more than you think. Because most of the time in hundreds, we're used to carrying, in the front of the pack, we're used to carrying about 1 liter. And I would say there's multiple sections in this course. So you might need 1.5 liters to 2 liters with these aid stations so far apart. So that's going to make it very challenging as the sun comes up and the heat rises.
So for those of you that are trying to find specific runners, particularly in the elite field, in the Mountain Outpost channel, that elite tracking is pinned in the live chat. We'll see if we can get that pinned in the World Trail Majors live chat as well, because we know that you are joining us from both of those live feeds, but that will be how you can exactly find your friend style, the runners that are in the elite field that have had trackers placed on them. And we'll do our best to kind of update you as the race goes on, if any of that changes. But that is what we are looking at right now. But yeah, so if you're just joining us, Wave 1 took off on time at midnight. Wave 2 took off at 10 after the hour. Wave 3 took off just 3 minutes ago. That's what you just witnessed. And then Wave 4 is starting their journey at 12:30 local time. And then I think at that point we'll be signing out of our first live broadcast stream of the day. Going for a little run in the Phoenix sun, gonna get a sunburn. It's gonna be excellent. And then we'll be back. We'll be back.
What are
in
you
studio.
gonna do, Seattle girl?
Yeah, slowly melt is what's gonna happen. It's great. I need some sauna training.
If you'll
so this
notice,
is
I've been
perfect.
working on my base.
Yeah, you've been working on your base tan. Totally. 100%. But yeah, so we will be, if you're just joining us, we'll actually be slowly signing off for a couple hours, about 3.5 hours, because the runners are taking off into the night. And so we won't have cameras or beautiful drone footage of those athletes for a little while yet. The live tracker will be running, so you'll be able to update how the runners looked as they came through that early checkpoint, aid station 1, which is again, 25 kilometers or so into the race. And then by the time that they've made it through about the 50K mark, we'll be back in studio waiting to kind of see how things are shaking out up there.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. The FOMO is real. We're ready to go.
Yeah, and we're going to come back all caffeined up. We're going to go get coffee after we run.
Yeah, this morning we only had 1 cup of coffee each, and that is clearly
Not enough.
not enough coffee. So bear with us as we work our way into this live broadcast. I don't know what you're doing. Are you working? Are people working right now? Don't work. Hang out with us all day long. That's why you got dual monitors, I'm pretty sure. That's like the whole reason to have a multi-monitor setup.
Yeah. And hopefully if you're a runner out there, you better be at a standing desk. It's way better than sitting.
Yeah. No, we'll be sitting for a lot of today, and this is going to be maybe the hardest part of both of our days. We'll be
I'm
sitting
going to have to do a
for
bunch of
hours and
mobility
hours.
work at the end of this. I don't sit this much ever.
Yeah, it's okay. At some point in time, like we won't have cameras on us, and we can just be like kneel. We can move the chairs. And we can just like kneel and do some stretching behind the mics. It'll be fine. But yeah, again, so if you're just joining us, the race did kick off on time at midnight. We've got 3 of the 4 waves out on course. So that means all of your wave 1, those elite runners, they took off on time about 25 minutes ago. And they are working their way through a very fast section of the course, which is a large, long section of dirt roads that the runners are going to be traversing. And then once the sun comes up, they'll be on some very beautiful, maybe more technical and challenging portions of the course.
Oh, is he running?
Starting in wave 4.
Is Camaraderie running? Yeah. I love that guy. He's cool.
It seems like he's your best friend.
We had a anytime you face death together, it transcends language.
Yeah, that is a bonding for life kind of moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it looks like he'll be taken off in wave 4 here. I do think that maybe they're doing a relay, that'd be kind of fun.
He has number 1. He has the number 1 bib.
I love
Of course.
That's
He's
next
the race
level.
director. He's supposed to have that.
I mean, if you're the race director, you get to have number 1, I'm pretty sure.
For sure.
Jamil's losing it in studio. It's too early to be losing it, Jamil. He's amped. He had more coffee than the rest of us.
Yeah, I noticed he was over there with his Muggy and 100 cup, and I was jealous of your coffee.
Just sipping away. Yeah, where's the
Yeah,
coffee for the talent, Jamil?
Like my wife always says in the morning, "Where's Coffee Boy? Is he available? Coffee Boy?"
That's in my contract.
I am Coffee Boy.
My handshake contract. Oh, he runs every year. Does he run out of wave 4 every year?
That's awesome.
That is next level. Just a long.
He
Actually,
obviously is good at delegating.
So one of my teammates who's running the race, Shun, who's a race director in Japan too, he does things like we'll run basically 100 miles in training for we'll do like 100-mile training day for hundreds. Just like the dude just runs and runs and runs.
That's crazy.
And it's just like, doesn't seem like he's ever hurt. I don't know what else he's got going on, what else he's doing, but it's just like, I don't know. I think getting to go experience some of these other running cultures is a really cool way to get to experience the world.
Yeah, for sure. It's obviously maybe a touch chilly. I wonder what the temperatures are on the ground. I wish we could get that number, like what the start temp was.
Yeah, because we're definitely seeing runners in wave 2, 3, and 4 with more jackets on, more long sleeves, etc. We didn't, we saw a lot of bare arms in that wave 1 group.
In the elite group.
Yeah. So once again, running a little bit faster.
Yeah.
You're going to be a little bit warmer, etc. But I mean, he looks like he's like comfortable in gloves and a jacket.
Yep.
There at the start too. So it's probably the temperatures might be pretty ideal right now. But again, our biggest concern is that there's a long way between aid. Between the start in aid 1, between aid 1 and aid 2, and then between aid 3 and aid 4, it's quite spread out. And so you can kind of get suckered into not taking care of yourself early in a race like this. You got your head down, you're in the dark, just kind of, running away. And, if you're only carrying a liter of fluid on you, for example, that might not be enough for some of these runners in between those sections. That could take quite a bit of time, despite it being a flatter, faster bit of the course.
I'm going to see if I can't find some forecasts here too, like a current.
Yeah, bells at the start. Wave 4, the final wave of runners starting this morning. Again, nearly 3,000 runners are going to make their way around the mountain, completing their first or potentially, their second, third, fourth, how many races they've run. This race has been around for quite a while, many iterations of the course. But yeah, wave 4 underway, our final wave of runners kicking off their journey on a very, very early Friday morning in Japan. For many of these folks, this is night 1 of 2. That they will be experiencing as they make their way around the mountain. And I think that is, running these races fast is very hard, but for the runners where it's going to take 44 hours to finish this thing, that is, the double night exposure, a second morning of temperatures creeping up is very, very challenging. So all of these runners will be doing their darndest to make it back around the mountain.
Yeah, the forecast is for today, when it is supposed to be a high of 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and humidity 70%.
That is incredibly high. It's not quite, swimming through the air Midwest standards, but it is quite. That is not, so, evaporative cooling only works when there is room in the air around you for the water to move along that gradient, essentially. And so that is why those hot, humid days, even if the temperatures aren't that high, are much harder than the run that we're about to go on, where it's going to be warm, but it's dry.
Yes.
It's a dry heat. But it truly does, evaporative cooling is one of your best ways to efficiently cool yourself while you're running. And you don't get that when it's 70% humidity.
Start 59 degrees.
Okay. So
current
so
conditions
very
are 59 degrees at the start line in that park.
Yeah. So that is pretty
nice weather.
Yeah.
But still warm. Almost 60 degrees at the start in the middle of the night at midnight.
Yeah. Yep. So 30 minutes after midnight right now, local time in Japan. Nearly 3,000 runners have started their day. They're going to raise the banner one more time for him as the race director, heads out on course as well. Does this make him the unofficial sweeper?
Maybe that is. I would say he just gets to walk down the start line by himself and to start. Is he the last the last to bring up the rear. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. This reminds me a lot of like canyons last year where it was surprisingly warm for how early it is in the season.
Yep.
I think there are going to be a lot of runners caught unaware. It just being the first pretty warm day of the spring to summer season. That is going to feel pretty darn brutal when we hit, honestly, anything after 10:30 a.m. You think that you can wait until noon for it to feel warm. If there's sun, if you've got that solar on you as well, which you do have, I think, higher solar in Japan too. Kind of the closer you get to the equator, the more you get that kind of impact from solar radiation as well. That heat hits differently. The ambient air temperature might not be that high, but between the humidity and the solar radiation, it gets really warm really fast.
And they're not supposed to have major winds or anything, so they're not going to get a lot of cooling during the day. The forecast is it's looking like 3 to 4 mile an hour winds, so light breeze.
And
so
that's
light, not much.
It's not much, and that breeze can be helpful, right? That is one of the ways that you can cool down. Air moving over your skin, or water. Like that's why cold rain is so dangerous, because air or water moving over your skin is a good way to kind of pull that heat out of your body and into the atmosphere around you. But yeah, that's pretty light wind. That's not going to be quite enough for it to feel, I think, much cooling effect out there.
And it looks like the forecast is showing clouds rolling in about 8 or 9 in the morning. So, like, it'll be partly cloudy. So that might give them a little bit of a break from that solar radiation we were talking about.
Yeah, that overcast nature.
So they might get a little bit of a break. But the sun's still going to be out most of the day. It's not supposed to get fully cloudy until evening in Japan. So about the time the lead men finish.
Yeah, someone mentioned in the chat that if you're a race director and you're going to run the race, starting last is kind of the classy way to do it.
It is a cool way to do it.
And I think that's really awesome. Jamil's getting inspired in studio. Jamil's like, what race am I going to start behind all of my runners? We'll give you bib number 1.
And Camaraderie was a North Face athlete, so he's pretty quick, even for he's getting older now, but he's still probably pretty quick, so which means he's going to work his way up through the pack and be able to like talk to people and socialize. That's pretty fun. Sounds fun to me, at least.
Yeah, it's
high fives.
Yeah,
lots of high fives.
Oh my goodness, it's like an out and back course, right? Where it's like you're just constantly seeing people. That is so, in my mind, it can be scary, right? Because people know exactly where you are from a competitive standpoint, but it's also just like very invigorating to have all these people that you're cheering for that are cheering for you. We had a 8-mile section, 4 miles out, 4 miles back during the Gorge 50K 2 weekends ago. And that was the highlight of my day. It was like, 7 miles of getting to cheer. Like I saw the lead men who were running very, very fast.
Yeah.
And then got to see, the rest of the front of the men's pack, the 8 or 9 or so women that were ahead of me, got to see all of them. And then got to see, people that were another 7-8 miles behind me by the time that we split off again. And that was really cool to get to cheer those runners on, get cheered on by them. A nice gal. I was cramping really badly because I always cramp in my first race of the year. My muscles just like need to figure it out basically. And she let me balance on her shoulder because there was no tree to hold on to. I was like, I just need to stretch for 10 seconds. And she's like, yeah, I need my shoulder. So some nice gal stopped in the middle of her own race to let me hold on to her arm for a second. Yeah. So I do think that camaraderie that you experience out there is really, really special.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So again, all 4 waves have taken off officially. Their journey has begun. Nearly 3,000 runners out on course. A full 24 hours from now. 70K will get underway. There's another 800 runners taking part in that race, including our dear friend Stephanie Howe is in the 70K there, which is really cool to see. I think she got to bring her son over to the race as well. Which has to be just a really fun experience to go to Japan and experience some food and some culture over there ahead of a really wonderful 70-kilometer race. And I think that is also really, a cool a cool experience too, to say, you know, some of these races, a lot of these races that are taking place, Madeira, another great example this weekend as part of the World Trail Majors, has many distances. The 115-kilometer race being kind of the premier race of the weekend, but the 85-kilometer race, the 60-kilometer race, the trail marathon are all really special races. And so I think we can feel pressured into doing the longest distance at an event or the premier distance at an event. But I think you can go and experience these races, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do the 100-mile. You don't have to do the 115K. You don't always have to do the hardest thing possible, which is really hard for ultra runners, I think, to sometimes wrap our heads around.
I have trouble with that.
But you can go have a really wonderful experience, and still, and these other distances are still very competitive. It doesn't always have to be that 100-mile situation.
Hopefully my wife's not listening right now, because she would be agreeing with you.
She's like nodding along.
Yeah,
she's like, I'm
Jeff,
taking
you don't
notes
always
for
have
later.
to do the long one.
Yeah, I'm taking notes for
She's
later.
not a big fan of the 200 plus.
You know, you can only do so many of those a year, I've been told. So,
Right.
you know, being thoughtful, being careful.
I don't know. Ask Mike McKnight. He does like 4 or 5 a year sometimes.
I love it.
It's kind of insane.
Someone in the chat says, if you've never paced an RD during one of their races, I highly recommend it. Everyone you pass on course is so appreciative.
That's fun.
Jamil, I'm pacing you at something, okay? Sounds good.
And you have to start last.
You got to start last.
With the number 1 bib.
And I'm going to pace you. It's on record now. People in the chat will hold us accountable to this, so it has to happen. It's been decided. Our overlords, the YouTube chat, have decided.
The overlords.
Yeah. Well, team, I think we're going to start wrapping down in studio for a little bit.
Yeah, they're still chatting away, so I don't know, but I guess we can.
Yeah. I mean, you can just hang out with us in studio, but I think we're going to slowly kind of wrap up the English channel's first stream, because we're not going to get footage of our runners. They are out on course. It is dark. Can't really shine bright lights in their eyes. Drones don't really pick up much besides the trail of headlamps. And so I think we are going to sign off for a little bit, and then we will be back in 3 or so hours, 4 hours, just under 4 hours. Okay, so if you are watching this and you're in the U.S., you need to go do your run right now or take all your work meetings. And then just after 12:30 Pacific time, we'll be back live in studio. Jeff Browning and I will be here until 7 p.m. or so. So come join us for the rest of your workday. Join us for happy hour.
Happy hour.
Do your strength or mobility while hanging out with us. Ride the trainer while hanging out with us. The world is your oyster. We are a captive audience. But
we will be here.
I think we're going to go get our own little run in and get some more caffeine in our system. And we'll be back with you just around midday.
Yeah, giddy up.